TV. Labour will try to force the government to publish a string of documents relating to its Rwanda policy. The party will table a vote demanding ministers disclose exactly how much it would cost to send each asylum seeker to Rwanda. The vote will also demand that ministers reveal the cash set to be given to the African country. To give us his take on all of this is former Labour Party advisor under Tony Blair's government, Mr John McTernan. John, welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. We are, as you can see, in slightly more salubrious surroundings. We're preparing, of course, for the next Labour government, so we thought we'd better change the colours to red instead of blue. I presume you would approve of that.
Definitely, totally approve of that.
Now, listen, I'm all in favour of asking the government tough questions, all in favour of finding out what their Rwanda policy will cost us. But do you think there's anybody there that knows the answer?
Well, there definitely are papers, and we know from the BBC that there's quite a lot of Treasury documents from when Sunak was Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, where he was asking those questions. And we assume, from what I've read, that Treasury actually made some calculations and tried to force down the costings. And I think that there were bids from Number 10 for hundreds of millions to be spent, and so that so thousands of people could be sent over to Rwanda. So I do think it's fair that we get all the details out there, particularly because it would probably add something to the fire that's there between the different wings of the Tory party who are fighting over whether this should be more liberal or less liberal.
Yeah.
So it adds the gaiety of nations, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, I'm not one of those people that thinks that the Rwanda policy was a complete and utter failure and a complete and utter disaster. My belief was that it would work if they'd actually ever implemented it. I'm just now worried that it will never be implemented.
Oh, look, I don't think it will be implemented. And in a funny kind of way, I don't think it was ever intended to be implemented. The policy that Rishi keeps talking about, which he says has been successful, of talking to Albania, I mean, that's been successful because essentially, as far as one can work out, they're paying the Albanian government to do the policing in Albania, to not let people come to the UK. Nobody comes here from Rwanda. And I don't think anybody really believes with a backlog of 100,000 that there's much chance of them being one of the 300 people ever being sent to Rwanda. So deterrence isn't the issue. The issue is processing. And for those 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10 people who don't get asylum and refugee status in the UK, deciding quickly and sending them home, their home country quickly.
Also, as far as I understand it, most of the people who are being returned to Albania are people who have been found guilty of crime in this country and who are being deported, as opposed to people who have just kind of tipped up on some beach in Dover, said they're from Albania, and are now suddenly going back.
Yeah, look, there's definitely something going on in Albania. I once met a guy who told me his party, the party he'd been working for in Albania, had come third in the election. I said, why? He said, oh, they had the third smallest wheat farms. So there's definitely something going on in Albania.
Well,
which
apparently
is more
they've got some very nice beach resorts in Albania now, which are all being built and funded by quite a lot of the illegal drug money that they're making out of the rest of Europe.
There's some lovely beaches on the other side of the Adriatic from Italy, and Montenegro, a country I know well, has got some fantastic places, and it doesn't have the same history of those being built in the way you're saying about Albania. So go Montenegro.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you reckon, though, is Keir Starmer's view of the Rwanda plan? Because I have to say, as much as he's kind of, you know, edging ever closer to getting his curtains fitted for Downing Street, I'm still not really sure what his immigration policy actually is.
On Rwanda, he's actually said he wouldn't do it. And it's not a solution. And I think that's right. We've spent, spent £300 million, I think, so far, and managed to send 3 different Home Secretaries to Rwanda, but no individuals at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, they all came back.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of, we've heard some Labour MPs talking about, offshoring it and talking about having processing centres set up in France. But again, it's all stuff that you can say, which the government has already said, but which is much more easier to say than to do.
Yeah, no, you can unpack it a tiny bit so that there was offshore application by Ukrainian refugees. They got processed really quickly. I think it would be really good if the Afghan people who worked for our troops in Afghanistan, who are now stranded in Pakistan, if there was some offshore processing there in Pakistan, enabling them and their families to come to the UK, people who risked their lives for British troops, I think that would be a thing. And I can imagine a way in which you could actually give documentation to allow some people to travel safely to Britain so they can then be, and 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 people who apply for refugee status in the UK get it. So it's wrong to make those people take a risky boat crossing to pay the people traffickers when you could either process them in France or bring them over. I think, yes, the devil is in the detail, but the issue is speed, isn't it? It's the speed with which you do this. Do it speedily, do it fairly, and have returns and have people enter the labour market as quickly as possible. That's the best way to stop the cost being borne by taxpayers and to actually make it fairer for the people who want to come to Britain. Because I always say, the people who want to come to Britain normally have a connection. Afghanistan, Somalia, the Kurds, people, they're coming to Britain because we went to their countries and they believe in something about Britain. They believe we're a great country. They want to come here because of our values. And I think we should be proud of that.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, it may be true in some cases, but the problem is that we're currently paying for people to be put up in hotels, not only in Britain, but also in Pakistan, because we're paying the price for that. And there's an awful lot of people coming out of Afghanistan without papers. We don't really know who they are. Nobody knows who they are. And that's the other problem. And all the talk of processing centres never actually explains what would happen to those who fail to seek asylum and get it. Because if you fail asylum, what happens then? And that's the other problem. Because at the moment, if you fail the asylum process, you just hang around for a bit longer and have another go.
No, you have to have, no, you don't actually. You have to have a returns under Tony Blair. We had a returns process.
But we don't have it now, though. Yeah, we don't.
No, I know we don't. Unfortunately, we don't have Tony Blair now.
Well, thank God for that. I mean, he did enough trouble. I mean, it's partly Tony Blair's problem that all these refugees are coming from the Middle East in the first place after he went and started blowing up Iraq. I don't know if you were in favour of that.
I was in favour of the Iraq War. I was in favour of a war against fascism, yeah.
Yeah, but you can't put the two things separately, though, because as a result of that, the Middle East is still burning and is still on fire. Not all Tony Blair's fault, I'll give you that. But the process... The
Russians have a role.
But the process... Yeah, but hang on. The process started then, and all of the people who come here from those countries are coming here as a result of the state that the Middle East is in.
To be honest, the process started after the First World War when the Western powers carved up the Ottoman Empire, and a lot of it goes back to then. So we don't want to debate history now, but I think there's a long history of bad mistakes by European countries in the Middle East, and we actually have to work hard to sort it all out. I think
there is, but I mean, a bit like the Horizon scandal, everybody has to take a little bit of blame. I mean, I've just been watching this afternoon. I was saying Tony Blair announcing it in the House of Commons and saying how great it was going to be for the Post Office and the modernisation of Britain, and that hasn't worked out so well either.
No, look, on the Post Office, there's been a long process across all governments of trying to make the Post Office make money, to stop losing money. The Post Office has got a big place on the high street and a big place in people's hearts, but it has been losing money for such a long time. And the Royal Mail has been doing the same, and the attempt to get a modernised system in place was the right thing to do. Managing this contract, it looks to me from outside, because I wasn't involved in any of it at all when I was working for Tony, and most of the stuff has been done under the coalition government, all the prosecutions. But it looks to me as though nobody is taking it to Fujitsu. They're the people who ran the software. They're the people I know from people I know who worked ministerial, like Ed Davey asking the civil servants and them asking the post office. I know from people in the post office. They took the complaints to Fujitsu, and Fujitsu said nothing's wrong here. There's nothing wrong, and they're going, they're saying there's nothing wrong with our code. There's nothing wrong, and I kind of think there needs to be, and there's an inquiry going on at the moment, isn't there? We're in the middle of an inquiry. Something needs to be done about how do you open the black box of software when the software provider goes, there's nothing wrong. And that kind of accountability.
Well, when it starts to go wrong, I would say, that's generally the first clue. That's when you go, actually, maybe it's not working terribly well, and there's an awful lot of people who say the same thing's happening. But let me give you one final opportunity to preach to me, because I see that you've been doing it on Twitter. You're going to tell me why it's a good idea to save people from the death penalty, even if they're completely horrific individuals who live in a country where the death penalty actually is a penalty.
Because I'm like Britain as a whole. Britain doesn't have a death penalty. I don't think there should be a death penalty in the countries of the Caribbean where Keir campaigned successfully to get that lifted. Because those countries had people who had to appeal to Britain, and British courts had to say, no, a mandatory death penalty is either constitutional or unconstitutional. It is right to remove a mandatory death penalty. In many of the countries where Keir worked in, it's the mandatory death penalty.
Well, no, but he didn't work there, did he?
Those countries have got a death penalty, but they don't have a mandatory one now. And I think all that Keir did was save people from the death penalty. And we know the miscarriages in the UK. had we had a mandatory death penalty, the Birmingham Six would have been executed, and that would be a massive,
Well,
great.
yeah, but you can't talk about hypotheticals, John. You know, the fact is that Keir
that's not-
Starmer, hang on, Keir Starmer
it's-
paints himself as a man who defended people because he defended anyone who was put in front of him. He specifically went to do this, right?
No.
So now you're changing the narrative to say, he
No.
doesn't mind defending. Hang on, you're now saying that he's changing the narrative because he's now going to change the laws in another country, which is not really any of his business to do, because he doesn't like the death penalty.
No, it's definitely the UK's business when it's the joint council of the Privy Council of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which is the final appeal court in those countries. Of course, you should be removing the mandatory death penalty in those countries. And as a defence lawyer, as a barrister, the cab rank rule applies that you take the case that come to you. As a moral campaigner who wants to see the death penalty removed, the mandatory death penalty removed, I'd like to see the death penalty removed in China, in Russia, in the United States of America.
Well, let's see if Keir Starmer's going to campaign for that. Well, is he going to campaign for that if he becomes Prime Minister? Is he going to go and meet with President Xi and say you should do away with the death penalty? No.
You know that all British Prime Ministers since 1965 have been proponents of the global treaty, which we get more and more signatories to over the decades, which is a total abolition of the death penalty. They're not just as our country,
well, you can sign lots of papers
if you want. Rid of it. They've actually signed
that working out
forever, and we do want to get that. We want to see that in all the countries that still maintain the death.
Well, I would suggest that Keir Starmer should spend more time making sure that this country is a safe place for people to live, and they're not going to be likely to be attacked by somebody who went around burying his 2-year-old stepchild alive. I think that would be something that people would care more about than what the hell's going on in Jamaica.
Yeah, but the issue that Keir was involved in was saying there should not be a mandatory death sentence. We're not saying we're for or against people who get convictions for murder, or that there should not be convictions for murder in those countries. It's simply that the death penalty is wrong, it's utterly wrong, and it shouldn't be in a civilized country. And definitely, countries shouldn't have a mandatory death penalty, in which the appeal mechanism is to Privy Councillors in the UK, the Joint Council of the Privy Council.
Well, listen, I should look forward to Keir Starmer's future pronouncements on China's death penalty, Russia's death penalty, and the death penalty in some states of the United States of America.
I think you'll find he's against it. I think you'll find he's against the death penalty wherever it is, democracy or dictatorship.
Okay. Well, yeah, but is he going to travel there and get it reversed? No, that's the difference. John, listen, thanks for talking to us.
He did this before he was an MP, as you know.
I know that, but you can judge a man. You can judge a man by the company he keeps and what he's done in his past. And I think that's what people are going to do.
Me, so you can judge him highly for that,
and I think you can quite rightly say, John, that people should be able to judge Keir Starmer by what he's done in his past. And if he wishes to defend it, that's exactly
I think the revelation of all of this is, do you know what? Turns out Keir Starmer's a liberal left lawyer. Who knew?
Yes. Well, thank God somebody's finally admitted it. Thank God somebody's finally admitted it.
Rubber mask off face and revealed.
Yeah, there you go. John McTernan, you heard it here first. So Keir Starmer is a liberal lefty lawyer. There you go. So he can't complain about being called that anymore. Thanks very much indeed. You're watching The Independent Republic of Mike Graham.